It's the war that has it worse than our parents. And not only that, we have it worse because our flex contracts, we have housing that we just cannot afford. There's the corona crisis, the climate crisis. The retirement plans are also not in our favor right now. And in total, we also get a student debt. So what we're actually asking right now for society is make education accessible for everybody again and make it debt-free. So right now what the situation is, students pay the entire bill because they take out loans. But we want a future where students and society split the bill so that we can all grow from it. Okay, so now we're going to start on our topic of tonight. Who are the international students? Are there any international students today in the room? Okay, we have one, welcome. Well, let me introduce them in some figures. So, 2014 was the last year there was a student scholarship, and 2019 are the statistics of the latest statistics that we have right now. So, back then, 4.3% of all students were international students, and that has grown more than doubled actually to almost 12% of all students is now international. And you can see there's about a quarter that is not EER. EER is Economic European Region, and they are included in the financing system that we have here. And non-EER students, they cannot apply for any study financing in the Netherlands. What you can also see here is that we had about 55... Okay, thank you. So back then we had about 5,500 students who used study financing by the state, and now it's only 5,000. However, what we see is that the amount of loans that are taken out right now are twice as high since 2014, which is quite significant to actually look at, because this is a very high amount. So why are there so many more students right now who are international studying in the Netherlands? Does anyone have any idea? Marinus?
That's fine. Because the Dutch universities. Oh, thank you. Dutch universities are relatively cheap to study at. For instance, British students pay for 1 year of tuition, they pay for what we pay for 5 years. So in contrast, we are, well, compared to large parts of Europe, we have good education, which is relatively affordable to some places.
That's a very good explanation. It's easier. It has become easier to study here, to apply here. However, to live here has not become cheaper. The Netherlands provides relatively high quality education compared to other countries around the world. For a lower price, that is also very good to mention. But also higher education institutions and other organizations around that want international students in the Netherlands because they can profit of them. And that's a trend that we've been seeing, that schools, they want international students to come because they also get a lot of money from the government for these students. So, what's the situation now? Right now, there's a distinction with EER students and other international students. For EER students, if you've lived here for more than 5 years, or if you work 56 hours a month, that is 30 hours a week, you're eligible for student loans, the same student loans that Dutch students can take out without this. So that is what's happening right now. While the EU regulations say that education should everywhere be accessible and the same. So this is quite an interesting thing that we look at right now, because here there are some rules you have to follow as international students before you can apply for study financing. And the future prospects, we have an idea. We right now have a plan on the table that says we want to study debt-free. That means that we want a student scholarship for if you live away from your parents from around 700 euros, and then the rest of the 500 euros you can work yourself. This is what we've also seen in our consultation, where people said, okay, you can work hours in the week and study debt-free. The possibility should be there. However, for that, we also have the idea that students who have graduated, in the end, if you have a higher wage, you pay higher taxes. But what we see right now is that a lot of international students actually leave the Netherlands after they've studied here, because only 25% stays here for good. That is not a lot of people if you see how many students come here. So how do we make it sure that international students can use the same systems as Dutch students, but also contribute to that financially? Because otherwise we'll have a system that financially could not work possibly. So, are there any questions about this?
So I think it's also good to say today that we are here not to make any conclusions yet, right? This is the first time that we enter into discussion with the group, and we are kind of like gathering all sorts of opinions and perspectives, and at a later stage we will determine what exactly the position of the campaign is going to be on this matter.
Yeah.
So any questions or any opinions on the stage? We will have some topics to discuss, so there will be discussion later as well, but if there's any questions, then we're happy to hear it. How many of you are internationals, actually?
One.
Okay. Hello. Okay. And do you have student financing right now, or do you want to say something about your situation?
Actually, first, I actually kind of have a
What's
question.
your name, by the way? Sorry.
My name is Aniku.
Okay, nice to meet you.
I'm from Hungary. And I kind of have a question. So you were talking about the 700 euros that come from student financing, and I don't quite understand, like, how would it work the same for international students, or what is kind of the proposal? So would international students have to work those 13 hours a week for them to get it, or should it just would they just get it? For example, European students, or?
Well, we don't have an answer for that, and that's why we're here actually today, because this is the regulation that we really want to work for everyone. However, we also want to explore what your ideas are on this, so that we can eventually make a plan for this too, because this is one of the topics we have not conceptualized totally right now.
And another thing that I wanted to kind of add to the conversation is that you brought up how only around 25% of the international students stay here. And I also hear that a lot, that one of the reasons why not many people think of international students or like sort of care about their situation is because they think, oh, they will just spend around 3 years here and then after that they will leave. But my perspective is that if it is very attractive for me to stay here, if I feel welcome here, if I feel like feel supported here, if I feel like I can build my own future here and I can support myself here, then there's a much higher chance that I'm going to stay here. Because then I think, okay, I finished my bachelor's, but it's really good for me here, it's really good to study for me here, so then I'm going to do my master's here. And if I already did my master's here, then why wouldn't I just start working here? Then it's kind of a slippery slope, and it's just really easy for students to stay here. It's really attractive to stay here. Yeah. So I think we should kind of approach it from the point, what can we give to international students so that they would stay here, and then they would give things to us because they would contribute to the economy, and through taxes they would kind of bring that money back.
That's a very valid point. Should also be talked about. Yeah, that's very interesting. We have another person here.
I think it's really nice what you're saying. Hi, I'm Mika, by the way. I'm from the Netherlands. But what I would like to add to that is also when people return and decide not to stay in the Netherlands, I don't think that's a loss. I think it's really good also from a European perspective if as much people as possible can have good quality education, also in a broader perspective of European development. So I wouldn't say that's instantly a loss if they return.
So some of the points that Lena mentioned are also just talking points, right? So we don't have a position on this matter yet. So I think it's really relevant, the comments that you're making, and also based on these comments, like we will decide a position. So yeah, thank you for that contribution. But I think that's also a valid point to make.
I also have another question for you is that how many of you have a study that is international or internationally labeled fully in English? That's more than half of you, including myself. So I think this is very interesting to see that most of us have interaction with international students. We study the same things, and what are experiences you see from your international peers at your study that they struggle with, for example?
With housing, finding a room, especially for student work.
They're very expensive, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or they live on a campsite, or they rent something on Airbnb,
Right.
until their money runs out.
So there's like no support system when they land here.
Not that I know of.
And so another one there.
To continue on the topic of why it's perhaps not as attractive to stay here at the moment is in Groningen we have a program where international students come learn Dutch for free for the first basic part of understanding Dutch at least. And every time they try and speak Dutch in public or like at the supermarket or whichever store, every single Dutch person always just says, oh, I'll just switch to English, that's fine, and not giving them the opportunity to practice, even though that practice is what makes you learn the language. If you learn the language, it's proven that you're a lot more likely to feel at home in a new country. So I think there's a problem there. Dutch people might be a little bit too eager to come in this case.
So very much in the personal case, but then institutionalized, often international students have to deal with pages of Dutch text and pages of bills in Dutch and websites in Dutch. Even the form to get into this meeting here was fully in Dutch, not in English. Meaning that personally, yes, that people are on a personal level very willing to help for a short time, but institutionally it is very much not accessible in any other language.
That's a valid point. I have an anecdote on that later, that I actually got my confirmation of my university, and in Dutch it was not readable for me, and I'm a native speaker, but the English text I could understand, so it was very confusing. But we have another point there.
So, like, considering the language, I've had very, like, kind of conflicting experiences, but I think for me it is, yeah, there is a lot of Dutch text, especially like on the government websites and things like that, or if I want to basically apply to any kind of benefit or anything, then it's all in Dutch. And although I speak German and English and it kind of helps me understand basic Dutch, I'm still struggling with it, so I can't imagine what it's like for other students. And also, I've talked to a lot of international students, and generally I think a lot of us, when we come here, we really want to learn Dutch. Like, a lot of people really want to like immerse themselves in the culture and everything. But a lot of, I don't know, a lot of Dutch people told me, oh, we all speak English, it's gonna be fine, like don't learn Dutch. But I think a lot of us are very eager to learn it, and I think we're not really provided enough opportunities to do so. For example, I go to the University of Amsterdam, and there for the economics degree program, they do finance one Dutch course, which is only until like level A1. But at least they have one course, and I study political science, and there is nothing, like we have to pay a lot of money if we want to take a proper Dutch course. And there are some Dutch courses like financed by the municipality, but there's a lot of long wait lists for that, and it's really difficult to find the right time slots because you can't really choose. And if you work or you have your tutorials at that time and you miss a certain amount, then you can't even properly do it. So it's just really difficult to find an option to learn proper Dutch if you don't have a lot of money.
Yes, and then to go back to the study financing system, have you noticed, you or people around you all, that people have trouble knowing about that the system like this exists, or people can apply for that because, yeah.
One of the biggest problems was that we weren't informed at all about the existing system or what we may maybe apply for. There was like no sort of crash course or anything, and like, okay, this is how it works, this is what you can apply for. Because, for example, I only recently learned a couple of weeks ago that I am eligible for a healthcare benefit, and I only found it out because one of my flatmates also has it, and he told me. But when I went on the university website, basically they tried to sell us some form of other student insurance, which is actually more expensive because I could just get, I'm actually eligible for like normal Dutch insurance, and then I can get a healthcare benefit, just like all other Dutch students. But most of us don't know about this because no one ever told us that, and it's really difficult to figure it out on the internet. So I only realized it because one of my friends had it. Yeah, so that's also one of the examples, and like nobody told it to me for months and months.
Yeah, that's just not okay actually. We have another one here. If anyone else has something to add, please do so.
And I think this is just one of the mere examples of profiteering from a lack of Dutch knowledge. Especially the current system is very eager to wave the money in front of the eyes of students and then show the drawbacks afterwards.
Right.
Because I know a couple of international students that first got into the loaning system and then afterwards only discovered the drawbacks and the first year payment and all extra things, and even the fact that some parts have to be paid back if they don't earn their degree, which some people that are maybe not the best at getting their degree have a lot of problems with, and adds a lot of additional stress in an already stressful career.
Right, that's very important. So what we generally see is that there's not a good landing system here in the Netherlands, that you are not informed, which is very contrasting actually to what Dutch students can have. Because usually when you finish high school, you're like going to StudyLink and it has like everything you need, like do this, do that, and we don't have that for international students, which I find troublesome. But okay. Yeah.
I think, any more questions?
No, but we have something from Groningen that we're going to do now, which is a quiz.
Fun.
And I think Marinus is going to come here.
Yes, so hi, I'm Marinus, I'm from the committee in Groningen. I was asked to present our little Kahoot quiz. Yes, we are this basic. Sorry. Also not sorry. So you can all go to the website and type in the pin so you can participate in our little quiz. And see who knows the most about international students. It's just a few basic questions, just trying to, get some basic info out there. Yeah, I don't know what to say at this moment. I'm not great at filling voids of empty space, but I think it's going quite well. How many people do we have here? Then we still have 16 to go. Ah, fair enough. 15 to go. 14. It's also fun that I have a small little sidekick here.
Ik
Great.
Is everybody in?
Everyone ready? Or people at home who might be watching, everyone ready, I guess? Alright, in that case I suggest let's start. Well, yeah, this is where we are, obviously. Alright, first question. Student benefits in the Netherlands are available for...
Read it out loud.
Oh, Dutch students only,
In red?
EU students and Dutch students in blue, and students from all kinds of nationalities with a nice little circle. Who got it wrong? Oh, painful. It's okay. Let's see who's in front. Nice. All right. Great top 5. Let's go to the next question. How many hours should an EU student work to be eligible for study finance? I think Alina spilled the beans on this one yet. In red, it's 24 hours a month. In blue, it's 32 hours a month. And in yellow, it's 56 hours a month. If you don't have this one right, I know you weren't paying attention. No, that's alright, I don't blame you. Yes, next please. There we go, I see a few people from Groningen who are making the cut. Up north, let's go. EU students studying in the Netherlands can apply for a travel card, like a OV-reiskaart. It's what Dutch people have for free public transport during the week or in the weekends. So, is it true or is it false? Five seconds remaining. That is false. There is no OV-reiskaart for international students. They cannot apply for that. So that's a bit mean. It's something that Dutch people get, but internationals don't. So it's interesting to see how you feel about that later in the discussion. Can we go to the next question, please? That's going quite good. EU students can apply for supplementary grants. Is that true or is that false? Supplementary grants is when your parents don't earn enough, so the government fills up a little bit of the money they are supposed to give you. Are international students eligible for that? Yes or no? True or false? That's also false. This is another thing EU students don't get. All Dutch students do get that.
Sorry, this is not true. I know for a fact somebody that got one.
You can get it if you work.
No, this is supplementary grant.
Yeah, you can get one.
Yeah, you can get it.
6 hours a month.
I'm blaming Dieke. Oh, she's... Our boomer from FNV filled out the wrong answer.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry, what did you say?
So it is true that it's not like you just naturally get it like Dutch students do, but you can apply for it if you work. So I don't know. Depends on from where you would get it.
I very much agree with you. This one should have been true. I'm just going to point the finger. Wasn't me. Next question, please. I hope this one is correct. Let's find out soon enough. Last question. Why should the Netherlands grant study finance to EU students? There are three different answers. EU law does not allow to differentiate between Dutch and other EU students. Because Dutch students receive study finance in other EU countries as well, or because Dutch government wants to attract more international students. So yeah, the answer is that the EU doesn't allow you to discriminate within the EU. So if you are participating Dutch inhabitant, basically. So if you work enough hours, then they're not allowed to deny you this because you're an active participant in the Dutch samenleving, society. Thank you.
Actually, this is also false. Because it's not just EU students, EEG, so the European Economic Region, which includes Switzerland and Norway. So, lieve Hoover.
Fair enough, but let's go to the final results. Let's see who won. Interesting. Ooh, comeback story. Number 2, nice, from Groningen, shout out. And number 1, I think we have this one already. There we go, from winner from the beginning onwards. I have no clue who won actually. Fair enough. Congratulations. Well done, well done. I have no clue. Is there a prize actually? Is there? I don't know.
Stickers. Oh, we have stickers.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. The prize is stickers.
Just a sticker.
Yeah.
Make me
It
fun.
wasn't a perfect quiz, but it was a quiz. I hope you enjoyed it all. I have two. Can I give the microphone back? While. Thank you. And going out.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to our break. So soon we're gonna get some food here. What is important, you can get a drink at the bar, stay seated during a meal, and yeah, enjoy. Bon appetit.
What did you say about that?
Oh, it's important to stay seated, so don't walk around because Corona, you know.
Hadden jullie nog een assignment gemaakt of niet? Zoals alle vorige groepen? Ja, is dat
So the food will be ready in about 20 minutes. This gives us the time to socialize a little bit and to have some drinks. Thank you.
Kijk, dan is er eentje. Ja, ik zie het al. Test. En ja, hij pakt alsof er niet goed in zit of zo. Nou, misschien dat wel. Misschien dat het test. Ja. komt wel best wel veel audio binnen, hè? Misschien moeten we dit even...
Test.
Ik heb hem daar op min 10 gedaan, dus we hebben misschien een beetje te veel aangepast.
En dat je hem een klein beetje omhoog zet? Test.
Perfect, toch? Ja.
Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Zal ik het gewoon hier laten? La 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 la. Gracias. Test, test. Ja? Ja? Staat hij aan? Oh. Test. Oh ja, nu is hij goed. Zo, lieve mensen. Ik hoop dat... Wat zeg je? Wat zeg je? Engels. Oh, dear people. Sorry. I hope you had a nice meal, all of you. Was it good? Yes? Okay, I see nodding faces, so that should be a good sign today. This is the second part of our presentation, and we will take advantage of the opportunity to have a little bit of a discussion. So we will go through a couple of theses, statements, and then I hope this will provoke some reactions from the audience. So let's start with the first one. International students who will have received a scholarship during their studies in the Netherlands will have to stay and work in the Netherlands for at least 2 years or be forced to pay back the scholarship. Do you believe that international students who receive a scholarship from the Dutch government should stay in the Netherlands or should be forced to pay back their scholarship? Somebody that agrees. Oh. Yeah? There?
Yeah, well, I think this is an easier way for international students to contribute something to our society. I don't know if it should be 2 years or something else, but I think in some way they should contribute, and in this way they don't have to work during the studies, so then we can stop the 56 hours per month. I think this is a better regulation to do that.
Okay, so you are saying, well, maybe students shouldn't be forced to work during their studies, but there should be some kind of retribution after they graduate. Somebody that disagrees, or somebody wants to add something?
So I partially agree that I think it can be a good alternative option, that instead of working during your studies, you would just stay in the Netherlands and work 2 years or 1 year or whatever it is to like contribute to that money that you receive. But I think the better option would be to give both options to students. Maybe some students would choose to work some hours during their studies and then kind of contribute that way. Maybe they don't want to be tied to the Netherlands, but maybe some students who would want to stay here anyway, it's way better for them that they don't have to worry about that during their studies, and then they would want to work here anyway, so then it makes way more sense for them. So I think it's better to just give the option.
Okay. I see somebody sitting next to you, and
during the first and second session, we discussed having students on average working 10 hours to enable them to pay their studies next to the program of the money we are letting the government give them for free. Wouldn't it be far more generous and also far more benefiting for the government to have international students, just like the Dutch students, work 10 hours a week and just have them pay their studies that way, just like the Dutch students do?
So you basically disagree with the statement. You say they should be able to work a little bit besides study, but then they should not be forced to pay back or to stay and work in the Netherlands for 2 years.
I think that there should be something to have them pay back a little, just like the Dutch students do. Mm-hmm. But I think they should not be forced to stay in a country
where they do, like, is it even possible by law to have someone stay in a country by force of economics?
No, I don't think so. But then in this statement said if you do not stay, then you have to pay back the debt. That is a good question. I don't know. I saw some guys at the back as well.
Yes, hello. Yes, I am Nihat from Nijmegen. I wanted to say I disagree with the statement here because, well, I think that the most important way that someone who has studied gives back to society isn't necessarily the tax he gives, but more that he's doing a job that not everybody can do, and in that way contributes to society. And so then you could say, yeah, they should stay in the Netherlands to do that here, but I wouldn't disagree with that. I would disagree with that too, because I think that whether they stay here and improve the Netherlands or go back to their home country and then improve life there, in either way it is an improvement for all of us.
So you believe they should get the scholarship, but that there should not be necessarily something that the government demands in return?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, Marinus?
All right, so I like to play advocate of the devil. I think we're all quite similarly minded here. So I'm just going to be the right-wing liberal asshole who says, yeah, but if you don't demand anything in return, who's going to pay for it? As money is a scarce good. If you choose to do this, what are you going to cut on? Are you going to cut on social welfare? Are you going to cut on are people taking care of corona patients? Let's just be clear, this is not my personal opinion. I'm just trying to make the discussion a bit more broad.
Okay, I see a reaction over there.
I think that's an absolutely ridiculous statement. There's plenty of money all around the world. You just have to get it where it is, which is in the capitalist class, and we can just seize their wealth. That's how we're going to pay for it. But.
Okay. I agree. Over here.
So let's just give some other not genuine asshole liberal opinion. We're in an economic union. We're in the EU, which means that if the people stay in the EU, at least, then we'll have a benefit in trade and the other countries will improve, especially those in the south and in the east of Europe. If we're talking about the rest of the world, as long as they don't go to nations which are openly opposed to the Netherlands, there will be no problem. And if they go to nations openly opposed to the Netherlands, then they will spread the Dutch propaganda there, which means that the Netherlands too will improve. We're in a World Trade Union, and trade will improve either way.
Somebody over there?
Yeah, it's kind of adding to the point I made during the first session, but I think when talking about who's going to pay, exchanging students is also a part of trade, so I think it should be a conversation between different countries and their governments. Hey, we will be having students of your country and we will give them visas, scholarships, etc. And let that be part of trade agreements and make sure it's economically responsible and beneficial, but don't bother the students themselves with forcing them to pay back their scholarships in one way or another. I think it should be contextualized in a bigger economic picture. And also the fact that in the context of the EU, it is perfectly beneficial for the Netherlands if they have good education and bring that back to their own country. And if they decide to stay in the Netherlands, that's also fine by me.
So what do we say to those who will say, or who might say, we in the Netherlands now are going to have this very beneficial scheme of a scholarship, the LSB and the FNV, they were right, we should have a debt-free scholarship, but why should the Dutch government pay for foreign students? Why cannot the foreign governments pay for the scholarships for their students coming to the Netherlands? what would you say?
So first of all, one very important point is that one of the reasons is because if Dutch students went to basically essentially any other European country, they would get the same benefits as other students there. So it would be only fair if the Dutch government would give the same benefits to foreign students here too.
So, and then the argument goes on, right? And they say, well, we have now the most generous scholarship scheme in the world. Why should we then be giving this very generous benefit to students from abroad, while Dutch students won't get that kind of benefit when they are studying in their home in these countries, for example, right? Yeah.
Well, the problem with policies like these is that they are indeed very expensive and they should probably be organized internationally. The thing is, though, which makes education a unique subject is that you really do want educated people and you would really prefer them to stay here, which, well, what was it, the figure? 25% stays here? Mm-hmm. That's a pretty high amount, and I think that would be worth the cost of paying for it, even if you can't organize it internationally.
So if the idea is that we want students to stay here, forcing them to pay back the debt when they would go away, couldn't it be a motivation to keep them here? If you stay, then you don't need to pay back. If you go away, you pay a big fine.
I don't think that forcing people to pay back stuff that they may have done in the past is necessarily a good way to achieve that. You might be able to have other social programs for people who stay here, which would be even better.
Okay. Here, one more.
Very simply, the easiest way to get people against you as a regime is to take the liberty. If you force people to stay within the Netherlands for 2 years or pay a lot of money they in their home country can't afford, then you're essentially condemning them to 2 years within the Netherlands. Does any prisoner want to go back to prison? Does any refugee want to go back to a refugee camp? Does anyone from a war-torn country want to go back to a war-torn country? Of course not.
So you say this will scare away, such a matter will scare away international students. Okay, let's go to the second statement. Oh, sorry, wrong side. Other EU countries should contribute to the study cost of their abroad students, for example, through a standard EU scholarship fund. Should other EU countries pay for their own students going abroad? The Dutch government pays for the Dutch students going abroad. The French government pays for the French students coming to the Netherlands, etc.
Yes, all right, perfect. In some sort, yes, because I believe that if we continue having separate programs for scholarship funds within the EU, we will continue to attract more international students who are good and cheap education here, but the problem is, for me at least, is that some countries offer different things than other countries, and if we standardize this, then with inter-EU mobility would be greatly improved, also from Dutch students to abroad. And I do believe that this should be a part of the EU solidarity effort, where the rich countries pay more than the weak countries, but I think that's already happening right now, but just not through a standard EU scholarship fund. For instance, if we would have a grant, we would be paying more than other countries that would pay for their students to come here and study. The same goes for Denmark and Germany and Belgium, etc. So if that's already like de facto the case, why not standardize it, make it European-wide, and give every student that possibility without having to work for it? That seems more fair to me, at least.
Okay, here.
It sounds like a really good plan, and I don't think anyone here in essence would oppose it. But like we are sitting here now because a very good government plan has gone wrong and turned into a system which is fundamentally broken. If this EU-wide system would eventually break, then there would be no political power like the FNV big enough to oppose a system which is then broken. So maybe it would be very crucial to still keep some national responsibility in this, especially because if some countries choose to change their policies on this, the entire academic system may very well be broken with nothing to do against it.
So you had your finger as well?
So I think the idea itself could be a good initiative, but I don't think it could ever work practically, because not all EU countries are on the same level financially, and as someone who's from Hungary, I could never imagine the Hungarian government paying me anything to go abroad and being able to pay anybody anything to go abroad. And I think like basically the whole Eastern Bloc is probably in a similar situation or even more than that. So I'm not sure how that would work financially, because it would maybe be like, if we're doing it EU-wide, then it would maybe be like a couple wealthy nations paying for all of it, and then that would also probably lead to a lot of conflict, because they would not want to pay for all of it, but otherwise it would not be actually, like it wouldn't be practically possible to make, because most governments are not ready to pay that amount.
Money, yeah. Okay, somebody else? Yeah, at the back.
Yes, okay. I wanted to say first, if we think about the system as it is now with nation states doing this, then I would say it would be better to make the states where the university or colleges in to pay, because their economy would probably be better suited to pay for their own colleges. Like, for example, if Hungary had to pay for Dutch colleges, that would probably be harder for the Hungarian government to pay. But I think the best solution here would be, and it's maybe a bit far off now, but well, EU-wide college fund that would that way we would get rid of all these problems with national boundaries in this regard. And well, as to what could an organization that could defend our interests on a European scale, I would say it would be a union or a student union that is organized on a European scale. And
yeah.
That's also something we should work towards to achieve this.
Well, we are a member of a European federation as well, so there's like on a European level, like student unions are organized, but of course when you would have such a fund, then the education on European level would become more important and students would need to mobilize more across borders as well. But how would that proposal different from, how would that proposal be different from a standard EU scholarship fund, or is that a little bit what you would agree with? Okay. Okay, yeah. Yes, he's in favor of the EU-wide scholarship fund. Did I miss some fingers? No? Oh. EU governments should seek to balance the quota of incoming and outgoing students studying in other EU countries. Should the EU have a look at how many students are coming in and out of a country and should try to bring that in balance, or should it be completely free where students go and do not go and study? I see a finger there.
I think that would be very difficult to organize on an EU level. However, I think the Dutch government should definitely stimulate Dutch students to go abroad more, because right now we are relatively paying a lot for EEC or EER students who are coming here because we're funding a part of their tuition. However, there's very few Dutch students going abroad, so the balance is kind of off in that sense. So I think definitely high school students should be more stimulated to do their bachelor's abroad, maybe.
So you're not in favor of a quota, but you say you should bring the balance by stimulating.
Yeah, sort of. I think it just, a quota would be very difficult to realize.
Okay. Yes, here's another finger.
I think it might not be the best plan because, take for example, we have a lot of Hungarian students going to the Netherlands to study. Should we be forcing Dutch students to go to study in Hungary where the Hungarian students themselves don't want to study? I think this proposal is very much like the current or the previous, depending on what has changed, system for school distribution for middle schools and high schools in the Netherlands. The good schools are full within 10 seconds of subscription, and the less good schools are where usually very underpopulated because students didn't want to go there. If we do the same with countries, the entire academic system may very well break because some universities are just not up to the standards of people from some countries.
So within the example of the high schools, at some point the school is full, right?
Yeah.
And then the student, no matter how you turn it, has to go to some kind of other school. Whereas if we look at academic policy, we see that there's like it's possible technically, or at least we have seen through the course of years that student numbers keep on increasing, mostly because an increasing number of international students, so we don't really see that cap. And this proposal says there should be a cap, there should be a quota.
Exactly, but do you remember what happens with the system? What happens now is that the system starts including...
So the better grades are going for better studies, which means you're automatically going to have a very great class division. If the people who get lower class with less opportunities are going to be forced to go to a university with lower classes, you stop all competition between universities, making them all to liberal principles worse. And you are going to create not only an economical class divide, but even a geological class divide in students, which would be very bad.
Okay. Somebody, did you fine? So I hear no quotas, but let me play the advocate of the devil again. I think that's always good for a discussion to have a little bit. So basically you're saying international students, they cannot be forced to stay in the Netherlands and to pay taxes for the system, and they can also should not pay back their student debt, and there should not be a quota. Right? So then with the system that we propose, the Netherlands will basically have the most generous student scholarship system in Europe. And then what happens? The conservative person will go on and think and say the Netherlands will become the most generous country. There's no measurements to either ask for contribution or to cap out, or to have a quota. So this country will stream full of all students that cannot have these benefits in the home countries, and how are we going to handle that? The Netherlands will become the top financier for all the students in all of Europe. Is that reasonable? I see your finger there.
Well, I agree with what he said, that we can't force students to go to a country, but we can definitely say when a country is full. For example, I feel that the University of Groningen is quite full, and I'm not against international students or something, but the fact that it is full lowers the quality of education. So I think we should first hire the amount of students we can handle and then let them come to us. So I think a quota should be all right if a country is full. So I think countries should decide on this themselves, or per university, for example.
Okay, so you should there should be a cap or a quota based on the capacity of the higher education institution. Okay. Yes. Oh yeah. Sorry, didn't hear you yet.
Yes, I do think I'm against the quota in most subjects, but I do think it's a real challenge where there's an unfair competition between international universities, and especially in countries that where students leave to the Netherlands or other countries with better quality education systems, that they don't really stand a chance to improve themselves and match with that quality of education. And I think it's there should be an international effort with the EU fund you just proposed in the previous thing, where you also really encourage other universities that are not at the same level of quality yet to make them better compete with also universities, for example in the Netherlands, and that way try to balance the incoming and outgoing students. Make it more attractive for Dutch students to go to other countries to study there. For example, Hungary, it's a beautiful country. I've been there a few times. If it would offer similar quality or anything, I would love to study there, and I think there should be more equality in an international level between those.
Okay. Yes. Next to you.
The thing is, the Dutch system isn't the most generous at all, even if our proposal works. Denmark has free college and has students gifts to students that go to college, so they can pay for a living. And they don't have quotas of international students. And still, Denmark is doing very well in the realm of education. In fact, far better than the Netherlands, who's nearly at the bottom of the list in the EU. So how does Denmark manage this while the Netherlands shouldn't at that moment?
But then in Denmark, there's also a lot of debate about the role of migration. Maybe not for EU students, right? But this is also something that is in debate, right? There about how generous is the social welfare system, who can apply for the social welfare system. But yes, they do have a very generous scheme, that's for sure. Geertje.
Ja, toch? Ja. I think it's, it's really good to have these discussions, but I'm also a bit skeptical because I think, these are the problems of The Hague. These are, really smart people, they've studied a lot at blah, blah. They can fix this, and isn't it our role to, because they won't give us anything. They're too busy with funding Shell and, bringing this whole earth into a trash bin. So, my idea is often that shouldn't we, have a discussion about how are we going to politically press them to give us something, and of course these discussions are really, really important. But sometimes I also think that it's, international students are taking away our money and there's coming an economic recession. And so, and I mean, that's not what we're saying, but shouldn't our focus be on how to press The Hague, how to make them really, really, really scared so they give us our money, because this is our money, they are giving 4 billion euros to KLM, that's all possible, and they're still firing 5,000 people. So shouldn't our focus be, different?
So this campaign that we are having, the Schoolcampagne, is basically based on mobilizing students. What are demands on retribution for those students who didn't get a scholarship at all? What are demands on the case of international students? So before we press governments to do something, we need to know very well what it is that we want them to do. The student consultation was actually a first step that we had. There we said we want a debt-free, we want students in the Netherlands to be able to study debt-free. And now these 4 sessions, they are on different topics, like to look a little bit closer, what is exactly what we are offering, what we want international to offer to international students, what we want to offer to the last generation, between commas, let's say. So this is, these sessions are meant here for, but it's absolutely necessary that all of you, hopefully, will join all the action committees. Some of you already are inscribed, to later, once we have the inhoud, once we have the content clear, to actually mobilize on these issues. But we did want to discuss some of the dilemmas here, because these are also questions that we need to think about very well beforehand, because these very smart people in The Hague are very also smart in turning debates in the way that might suit them, and we want to make sure that our answers are clear. And also, when I throw up certain concerns or play the advocate of the devil, that's not a narrative that we are going to be telling in the debate, but that's for me, because I know I will be getting those questions whenever a politician, whenever we will put you up a proposal, so I want to know what kind of answers I can give. So I hope that clarifies a little bit the setup. Okay. The student public transportation product, so for international students, well, this is you, but you are aware, I think, of the free public transport that Dutch students can get. So we call that a student public transport product, literally translated into English, should be available to international students from other EU countries. I see one finger there, and then I will come up to you. Oh, there's no microphone working again?
Yes.
Okay. Then this one. Thank you. This one over there, and then here as well.
Right, yeah. Very important point with the student public transport product is, first of all, climate change. You don't want people to take a car or anything like that. You want people to go by train. That's a very important first point. Also, it might limit the amount of times people travel across the Netherlands, which might actually socially isolate them. It would be even worse for their prospects of staying in the Netherlands if they don't get around here often. And also international students, they're also just students around here, so I think they should be entitled to the same social experience as everyone else. So I think it would be ridiculous to not give them that.
Okay. Another one? Another finger here?
So I fully agree with that. I think international students should receive the same travel product as Dutch students. First of all, because basically this is also kind of part of the EU's equal student treatment policy. And is this microphone working or?
I think, yeah, I do hear a little bit of...
Oh, okay. Okay, now it's working, I think, yeah. So, yes, and basically the only reason why the Dutch government was able to get away with the current system is because they technically classify it as a loan. And so the EU law does not actually include that. There was already a court case on the European level about this. And yeah, basically it's kind of like a legal loophole, and that's the only reason why the Dutch government is able to do this. And basically in most other EU countries it cannot work that way because it should be protected under EU law. And I am especially passionate about this because literally anywhere you go, you either get as a student free public transportation or a very highly subsidized one. And even in Hungary, I can get a season ticket, like a monthly ticket for 10 euros. And here, especially if you're a low-income student and you have to live in the outskirts of the town, so you pay much more on public transport, it can go up to even more than 100 euros a month that you spend on public transport, and that is a very huge difference, I think, between countries. And the Netherlands has the most expensive public transport system in the EU, so it is just very financially heavy on international students, especially you come from, for example, Eastern Europe, and they might not have such a big budget to pay for this.
It sounds, yeah, it's true, that's incredibly expensive. I used to live in Belgium, and then I paid 5 euros for a ticket to cross the country. Here it's like 5 times that, maybe. Here you go.
Well, it's interesting. The point I wanted to make was about Belgium. I also studied in Ghent for a year. I started my bachelor's there, and I was really surprised by the fact that I was able to keep my student public transport project even as a financial compensation if I would not use the travel card itself. That was back then I think 90 euros a month. And I could use all the benefits as a student in Belgium for cheaper public transport, where I could get a huge discount on certain trajectories for like €1 per trip. So I was getting it both, and I think it would also be an interesting consideration where you would think, hey, what if we just agree in the EU that every student there gets to use the local benefits, that I as a Dutch student don't need the Dutch public transport benefits in other countries because I can use it right there. Yeah. So yeah, I was really surprised when I still got it as money.
And I think it's also important, and this not only counts for this point, but very often in the Netherlands we have this narrative of being such a progressive country with so many social benefits, and that foreigners should not benefit from all these benefits that we have. But as a matter of fact, we do not have that many benefits to foreigners, and very often if we go abroad, we can enjoy all sorts of benefits, free public transport or free tuition fee. So we should at least be, as such a rich country, we should at least be able to offer the same to people that are living and studying here in the Netherlands. I see one finger, and then I go up to you.
So even if you didn't use your Dutch transport in a different country, you could get money back. So for example, we could use that money to pay for the international cards as a solution for the economic system.
Yes.
Yeah, I think partly the student travel product was invented because a lot of students have to live at home. I also use it because I still live at home and I have to travel 1 hour each day, so it's nice that it's free for us. And you could argue that international students, well, they can't live at home possibly. But I think it's good if it's also free for them, because then they can live more outside of the city center, because if you live in the center of Groningen, you don't need a travel product because you can bike everywhere. But since there's a housing problem, it's very good that students can also live in a small village outside of Groningen and can travel for free to university. So it might be more attractive to them to live outside of the city center.
Okay. Yes.
I think in Germany you get free public transport in your region, and I think that would maybe be an interesting solution, because obviously like international students don't have to visit their parents, but then they can still live a bit further from the city center and still get free public transport.
So regional arrangements. Okay. Well, yeah. Somebody else? Let's go to the next one then. International students should have the right to a subsidiary scholarship based on their parents' income, even when such a scholarship is implemented as part of the abolishment of the current system. So the question here is, currently in the Netherlands we have something called the aanvullende beurs. So this is like a scholarship that we give to students from middle or lower income families. And if such a system would be would remain in place even if we change the current system, should international students have the right to have access to such a system? So are you from a lower or middle income family from another country? Should you have the right to this subsidiary scholarship? Yeah. What's your name, by the way?
Yul.
You?
Yul.
Okay, you.
I think because of the difference in living standards between European countries, that would be very, very difficult. However, then I think it makes more sense to just give like a basisbeurs, so like a normal scholarship, of which you could live. So say 750 euros, for instance, so you can at least pay for your rent and your food and daily expenses.
Okay. Marine?
At the moment, it's something we discussed in a few statements earlier, was that should EU students necessarily work for to be able to be part of this. So if the current system would remain in place with EU students having to work, for instance, I believe someone proposed 10 hours, for instance, instead of 16 hours a week, would that then not in contribution, in combination with the basisbeurs or the fund we already propose as a basis fund for students be enough to live on? Because students pay at the moment I believe 1,200 euros a month on average for their studies. So if we propose, if our proposal gets implemented and students get a fund for like 750 for instance, if they work 10 hours additionally next to that, then you're awfully close to the 1,200 already. So I believe that this thesis is only relevant if we actually decide not to have like a
debt-free.
No, not debt-free, but not to have that basic requirement of international students working to be able to be part of this. Otherwise, you would already get very close to the 1,200 euros.
Yeah. There you go.
I think whether this should be kept or not very much depends on what the new system will be like. Just like the person before me said, if somebody works, for example, 10 hours a week, and if the amount of scholarship or something they get from the government would be enough, plus the money they make from the 10 hours for them to be able to support themselves, then I do not see this extra amount as necessary. But if the amount would be lower and they would still need some form of extra money, and for example their parents wouldn't be able to support them, which is very common because Netherlands is a very rich country, and I think a lot of students that come from other countries may not have that kind of wealthy background, and there's a huge difference between the wages in the Netherlands and the wages in, for example, Eastern Europe or in Hungary, for example. So I think it is very important that if the money that you get from the government and you work a little bit is not enough to support yourself, then to have a system like that in place, because other than that, you're basically saying that, yes, you can come to the Netherlands, but only if your family is practically already rich. So basically we're excluding everyone whose family is not from a wealthy background, because they will not be able to support themselves and they will not be able to get anything from their parents.
Not only should EER students have the right for study financing, students from other parts of the world should have that right. Students from other parts of the world should have that right too. Why only students from the European Economic Zone? And why not the students from the rest of the world?
The European Economic Zone is of course the easiest to implement because most countries in the EU will agree for their students to be funded by another government. But if it would be for the entire world, it would of course be very, very beneficial to both the Dutch government and the rest of the other countries in the world. The EER is one of the richest zones in the world. There are people that need the money far more than we do, so the students would benefit more. And if they have a good thing going in the Netherlands, they will either stay because they don't want to go back into their poor country, or they might even go back to their country and spread some Dutch cultural concepts, which may make better trading partners for the Netherlands in the future, and may even very well affect the stance of the countries to the Netherlands, which is something which the government at this moment may pay a lot more for than they could pay with this system.
Can you say yes? There?
Well, we are lucky that the EER is one standardized system of education. We have European credit systems and other fundaments we share. And I think you can't just say we put the same system for all other countries, because the Dutch relations with all other countries are different. So I think it should be part of every other diplomatic and economic relations. When you make a trade agreement or through diplomatic relations, you should also take into account the exchange of students and make sure that, well, I think the other country is most of the times it's more important they get benefits than the Netherlands itself, but make sure it is adapted to the needs of the other countries individually, because there is no standardized systems as we have in the EER.
So you're saying not for all international students, but for those who the Netherlands have certain agreements with?
Well, I think for all students, but the system making sure they can have that benefit should be adapted for every country and the relations with the Netherlands.
Okay. Marines, did you have a...
Yeah, so to what was said earlier, that we should just allow everyone from everywhere in the world inside, I think it's, like, idealistically I very much agree. I think it's a very noble thing to plead for, and I theoretically agree. Yet what I see as, well, a former faculty council member at my university, being involved in a lot in what happens at the university, I already see the problems that these amounts of international students are causing at universities. The budget for students per student for universities has decreased 25% in the last, I believe, 10 years due to the increasing amount of students. If we would do this already for just the EER, then I think that amount would only increase more. So in theory, I fundamentally agree, yeah, but I don't think our housing could handle it. I don't think our educational institutes could handle it. That influx of students is just too many to count. If we have educational institutes of 30,000 right now on average, if we allow everyone in, that would double or triple. I don't see that like practically being possible. At least in the next 10 years, that's something you would have to like build towards in 30 years or whatever. But no way that would happen practically.
Okay, I see 2 more fingers, and then I'm going to put you guys to work.
Yep. I don't follow argumentation. I don't think the problem are caused by an influx of international students. That is ridiculous. The problem is caused by not enough funding being given to universities, not enough houses being built, etc. So I don't think that's very good argumentation against letting in extra international students. So, yeah, I fundamentally disagree with that.
There's one more finger here.
I'm no expert from a university board, but as far as I know, international students from outside the EEC pay 4 times the amount in the first year that Dutch students pay. I have heard rumors of universities using this to have a lot of students enter the university at the first year, kick them out before the end of the first year, and have their money. So maybe although it isn't the most ethical concept, maybe this would actually benefit universities instead of disbenefiting universities. And of course, having so many more students in the economy also makes the economy in the student city greater, meaning that in the first years we'll have problems, but with the amount to spend a lot of students then at that point have, and the amount of spend that they will spend using the money given by the government, they will be able to create a little economy of their own there, making sure that after a few years maybe the facilities will be there, that there is money for it, merely because of the increased workforce and because of the increased amounts of money in universities.
Okay, now we have, oh, Jesus, sorry. I'm going to give you guys an exercise. So the next one is, please form groups per table. Well, you have already done that. And discuss possible solutions for the following dilemma. Currently, international students from the European Economic Zone need to work at least 56 hours per month to be eligible for and get access to the study loan system. Now imagine that, if any, which systems could the Dutch government implement so that international students benefiting from a Niet Mijn Schuld campaign propose future scholarship system can contribute to the cost of such a system. So based on the idea that students should also contribute in some way to the system that we are proposing, if it would be passed, what could be the way to propose? So there are going to be some papers handed out to you, and you can write down what your ideas are. So I will give you each 10 minutes for that. 10 minutes. Maybe. All ooh. So hello everybody. I hear a lot of talking. I hope you could come up with some proposals. So I would suggest that we will start with one person from every group who does a little presentation on what they came up with. And I would like to start with the group at the back. The mic is coming your way.
Yeah, we discussed this for a little bit, and we just fundamentally disagree with the whole notion of having to pay for your studies, because inherently studying is a contribution to society, and you don't need to contribute to that. That is already something you are doing. On the topic of this whole system, we don't really think it's very feasible as on a national level in the first place. It's a pretty understandable argument to say, well, why should we pay for them? But the whole point is that it isn't really them, it's us. We should all pay for each other's education, because then we contribute to each other, and that's what's important.
That's also a nice campaign slogan. It's not them, it's us. Okay. All right, what about this group?
So basically we were also saying that we kind of started from the notion that was kind of introduced earlier, that there's this idea that there would everyone, every Dutch student would get some form of aid, and then they would have to work 10 hours, and then they would be able to support themselves. And we kind of agreed that it should be just the same for internationals as well, because of the idea that if it is a pretty good plan, and if it's really attractive for students to live here and study here, then there's a higher chance that they will stay here anyway and contribute to the economy. So Zap also had a point that if we make a system where we force them to stay here, maybe they will not actually want to do that, and after that they will not stay here. But if we just make it a very attractive thing for them to stay here, then it is their decision, and there's a higher chance they will actually stay here for many, many years to come. And then we were also talking about the fact that even if they leave, they are within the European Economic Area anyway, and if they go back to their countries that are, for example, maybe less developed, they can improve it. So then the Dutch government would basically have to pay less aid to, for example, to those regions. So it would be beneficial anyway wherever they go.
Okay. All right. This group? Yeah.
Well, we don't really have much to add to what's already being said. We also fundamentally disagreed with the statement itself, because, yeah, if you are a student in Netherlands, whether Dutch or from another nationality, you are already contributing, you are generating knowledge, you are participating in an economic system. Even if you don't work, when you are doing groceries or even consuming anything, you also pay taxes. And yeah, we live in a knowledge economy, and the export and import of knowledge through academic systems is already beneficial to us and everyone else when we export it. So, and also if we export it, they can help build relations between the Netherlands and other countries. So yeah, I don't see why we should force people to pay back what we give them. Also this whole, yeah, us and them, yeah, it's all us. So yeah.
Okay. The Let's group?
All right, thank you. So we drifted a little bit. We got to talking first about, well, how can we, the discussion we had earlier about perhaps having more Dutch people going abroad. And then we got to discussion of what's the inherent extra value for Dutch people to have internationals in their surroundings. And the idea behind it is the cultural mixing of people to create something you can't learn from books, to learn from each other's interaction with each other, how other cultures deal with other things. So we saw some very interesting values in that, but in the end we came to this, the conclusion that the difference between the Netherlands of what benefits we propose, the price and quality of education is just too big. So basically we reverted back to one of the statements earlier where we said it's all us indeed, because everyone in Europe is in part of the same economic system, yeah, but that also means that you have to have more of an European-wide way to handle this. And one of the biggest problems now is that it's individual countries paying for their individual states and their individual educational institutes. So what you would want, in fact, for to really have an us is that this would be more of a federative Europe where, for instance, higher education is seen as more of a European thing than a national thing. One of the biggest problems, in my opinion, personally, not of the group, is that for in Europe, as well, the group it is, can't get taxes. They don't have any income apart from what the states give them. So if you let them tax everyone equally apart to the wealth they have as a country, perhaps from that budget you could then fund a college graduation fund for the entirety of Europe, making it indeed an us and not an us versus them. But if we don't have that pan-European solution, then we believe it would end up the richer states, like the Netherlands, being flooded with students, which it cannot take. We have a housing shortage. Only 2 years ago we saw protests because international students were sleeping on the streets because they couldn't find roofs for 2 months straight. Last year as well, we had people in Groningen staying in like emergency housing for more than 2 months. We need to create this pan-European solution to this, because this is not a state problem, this is a European problem, or not even a problem perhaps, a European chance. It's not ours to solve on a national level, it's a European thing.
Okay. I think that is very clear. If I may make a small attempt at a summary of tonight. So we believe it's important to be solidary with students across Europe at least, right? And we believe that we want a knowledge economy, we want to invest in our economy. That also means that we have to facilitate people from other countries coming into the Netherlands and studying here, and that they should be able to do that without making huge debts. The same kind of facilities that we want to provide to Dutch students, we need to make sure that international students also have access to these facilities and that they can study without debt. That's not just in the benefit of these students, that's also in our own benefit, because it will improve relations, because it will improve the students wanting to come to the Netherlands and contribute to our academic system, to our society, to our economy. And there's a little bit of a discussion still, I feel, of a less tension, if you will, whether or not you want to make a certain cap on the amount of students that can stay. But the best solution to that is to work together on a European level and to seek more cooperation on a European level to make sure that we balance out the inequalities that exist today. So this is a small summary I would like to make. A little while ago, Geertje made a very correct statement about, well, it's beautiful to be talking here about all the content, but what it is that we're going to do to actually pressure those politicians to make sure that our ideas that we thought of today and that many before you have thought of the last couple of weeks during our summer sessions will actually be put into practice. And exactly on that matter, I would like to invite our campaign leader here on the stage to tell us a little bit more about the actions that we are going to undertake next week.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you. Hello, my name is Michiel Cruijff. I am the campaign leader for the Niet Mijn Schuld campaign. These summer sessions are very interesting and they're important. We're exploring a certain aspect of the narrative that we're trying to impose on the politics. But in the essence, it's just, we're talking. And we shouldn't only talk the talk, we should also walk the walk. We should get into action, because if we want this system to change, we need to change the law, and the next cabinet will be changing it. So it is our job to make sure that the parties that will form a cabinet after the elections are all on our side when it comes to the loan system. And that means that the more parties that have an opinion on it that is ours, the better. Which means, of course, that their party programs should have should feature this discussion, and that means that the party congresses, where the party programs are established, will need to be pressured, and the party congresses will start end of October and they'll last until December. Now. Until now in the campaign, we've been sort of underground. We've been sort of silent. And we need to step up. We need to make some noise, and we need to take action. So I invite you all to join us, and for alliances, most of you are committee members. Who's a committee member here? Yeah. Are you guys part of a committee? No. All right. The way our campaign is structured is that in all student cities we have committees of students that have friends and a network that will join our campaign. In the coming months, leading up to October, October will be a month full of actions. We're going to pressurize, we're going to make some noise, and we're going to make sure that everybody in the Netherlands knows the Niet Mijn Schuld campaign and knows that and agrees with us that the loan system sucks, that it needs to be abolished, and that we need to replace it with a system that will make it possible to finish an education debt-free with 12 hours of work a week. All right? So what are we going to do? In the coming weeks, next week actually, there's going to be an action week focused on the rent problem for student rooms. Everybody knows it. They're skyrocketing, and the higher the prices, the more you need to loan, the bigger your problem will be in the future. So next week, join your organizer if you're in a committee, and then the Monday afterwards, it will be the 31st, which will be the date of the opening of the academic year. Now, during the academic year, 10,000s of new students will flood the education system. They will start their new bright futures, but also they will start their student loan. So DUO, the government service that administrates our loans, will have a lot of new clients, and therefore on the 31st we will rename DUO as the Ministry of Debt, and we're going to do that online. So you will get you will all get through your organizer. You will get what's the word in an instruction. Thank you. You will get an instruction what you can do online to create the Ministry of Debt online. But also it's going to be physical. We're going to go to the head office of DUO, and we're going to make some noise. We're going to invite the president to snip a ribbon and open the academic year by redubbing DUO into the Ministry of Debt. Those are actions, but the most important thing is on the 5th of September, there's a training day for all committee members. So if you're not a committee member yet, join your organizer. The organizers here today present are Martijn for Amsterdam and Lieveke for Groningen. Of course, there's other organizers as well, but if either of your organizers of your city isn't present, please go to Sandra. She's over there. Wave, Sandra. Hi. Become a member. Become a committee member and join us for the Niet Mijn Schuld training day on the 5th of September. Now, why is that important? On the 5th of September, we're going to train you guys to be activists. And we're going to train you guys to be activists online, but also offline. And we have some really cool actions planned. One of which I can sort of reveal to you, it's been a big secret up to now, is we're going to adopt the entirety of the parliament. We're going to adopt them. So every member of parliament will have one student adopt them, and just basically harass them on Twitter all the time. It's going to be fun. We're going to have 6 weeks of harassment through Twitter. Well, I'm saying harassment, but you know, we need to put the pressure on. We need to make them aware of the Niet Mijn Schuld campaign, and we need to make them aware that it's, you know, there's urgency. This is our chance to change the system. If we don't do it now, if we don't, you know, start walking the walk and not only talking the talk, if we don't get into action right now, we have to suffer another 4 years of the loan system. And that will be super detrimental to not only that whole generation of students, but also to you and to the society in general. So get into action, join a committee, talk to Sandra, talk to your organizer, and we hope to see you in action, and certainly at the 5th of September. Thank you. Questions? Yeah, no, wait, thank you. Hey, yes! Geertje.
Here for the opening of the academic year, and that is to start a camping at Duo, because there's you know, a bush kind of thing, and I don't know if it's the ground of the municipality of the ministry, because that, you know, is really important.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking a bit, well, for quite some time I've been thinking to start a camping.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to do that. And I also know, I don't know if my friends from Amsterdam are willing to go to Groningen, because this is, you know.
No, it's so far. It's 2 hours by train. Oh my God.
That is something I would really like to do. And well, I know a few people who like to join. But yeah, that is my plan for the academic year.
It's an awesome idea to start a campsite. But 31st of August is in 2 weeks. We've already started planning the idea by the committee of Groningen. The Ministry of Debt idea is from Groningen. And we've already decided, like, this is the idea that we're going to implement for the opening of the academic year. But that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. It is. Actually, next week, we're going to have an action week surrounded by, featuring the problem of student debt. And in several student cities all week, we will be, well, semi-occupying certain spaces in those cities. And building, putting tents down, or mimicking student rooms to show that the debts, that the rents are super high. So we're gonna basically do it. Your idea. And if you don't agree, then please join the committee and see if we can use your idea in another contest. Because we need fresh ideas. And we need ideas, creative ideas for the campaign to change the public narrative surrounding the loan system. And it's already changing. You know, we have the political wind is in our favor, but we need to push that extra mile to get what exactly we want. All right. Any other reactions? No? All right. Then I will pass the microphone to my dear colleague Alina for the final word. Thank you.
Thank you, Michiel. Yes, so, well, Michiel got us all buzzing right now for the action weeks. And now we're going to close off, and I want to thank you all for coming out. If you've come here and you have train costs or other public transport costs, you can go, I think, to Sandra, because she has these you can declare your costs, and then we'll fix that you don't have any travel costs to come here. Thank you. Reimbursement. Oh yeah, and it's only for FFA members, but if you're a student, that's €2 per month and 8 cents. So don't be shy. And I wish you all a good trip home. Thank you for coming. And if you haven't yet, sign up for the 1st of September, where we'll have our final summer session about the quality of education in the Netherlands. So thank you.
Ja. Gehuurd.